My name is Emily Carter, and until that Sunday afternoon, I thought I knew my family. I was sitting at our dining table, cutting small pieces of chicken for my 8-month-old son, Noah. He was sitting in his high chair, smiling and hitting his little hands against the tray. My husband, Daniel, was across from me, laughing. "He's going to be a drummer," Daniel said. I smiled. "Or maybe he just likes making noise." Daniel reached over and gently touched Noah's tiny hand. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Then my mother-in-law, Linda, put down her coffee cup. "I think we need to talk about Noah." Her voice was quiet. Too quiet. I looked at her. "What about him?" Linda glanced at Daniel, then back at me. "I think a DNA test would be a good idea." I froze. For a few seconds, I honestly thought I had heard her wrong. "A DNA test?" Linda nodded. Daniel's smile disappeared. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Noah," she said. "I just want to know the truth." My stomach tightened. "The truth about what?" She looked directly into my eyes. "Whether he is really Daniel's son." The room suddenly felt cold. I looked at Daniel. He was staring at his mother like she had become a stranger. "Mom," he said slowly, "that's enough." But Linda didn't stop. "I'm not accusing Emily of anything. I'm only asking for a test. There's nothing wrong with knowing for certain." I felt my face burning. I had never cheated on Daniel. Not once. Before Noah was born, Daniel and I had been together for 4 years. We had built our life slowly. We rented a small apartment, saved money for a house, argued about furniture, laughed over burnt dinners, and dreamed about having children. Noah was our miracle. So hearing his grandmother question his father felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. I whispered, "Why would you even think that?" Linda hesitated. Then she said something I would never forget. "Because Noah doesn't look like our family." I stared at her. Daniel immediately stood up. "That's ridiculous!" Linda shook her head. "You can see it, Daniel. His eyes are different. His hair is different. Even his skin tone is different." I looked down at Noah. His little fingers were wrapped around a plastic spoon. He had no idea what was happening. He was just a baby. My baby. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Daniel knows who his father is," I said quietly. "And I know who Noah's father is." Linda folded her arms. "Then you shouldn't be afraid of a test." That sentence hurt more than anything else, because suddenly I wasn't just being questioned. I was being treated like a liar. Daniel walked over to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "Emily, I believe you." I looked at him, but there was something in his eyes that scared me. Not distrust, confusion. And that confusion was enough to make me wonder how much damage his mother had already done. Linda picked up her purse. "I'm only trying to protect my son." Then she walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around and said, "Sometimes, Daniel, the truth hurts less when you find it early." The door closed behind her. I stood there silently. Noah began to cry. I picked him up and held him against my chest. Daniel came closer. "Emily." I shook my head. Please don't. I'm sorry. I looked at my husband through my tears. Daniel, if your own mother can look at our baby and see a stranger, how long before you start seeing one too? He had no answer. And that was the moment I realized Linda's request for a DNA test had already changed something inside our marriage. I just didn't know yet how far the damage would go. The next morning, I woke up before Daniel. For several minutes, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. I could hear Noah breathing softly in his crib beside our bed. Normally, that sound made me smile. That morning, it made me cry. I quietly got out of bed and walked over to him. He was sleeping peacefully, one tiny hand resting beside his face. I whispered, "Mommy loves you." Then I kissed his forehead. Behind me, I heard the bedroom door open. Daniel stood there. He looked exhausted. "Emily," he said softly. I didn't turn around. "Are you going to ask me to take the test?" "No." I finally looked at him. "Then what are you going to say?" Daniel walked closer. "I believe you." I wanted to believe him, but I could hear the doubt hiding behind those 3 words. I crossed my arms. "Do you?" "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell your mother to apologize?" He looked down. "I will." "When?" Daniel sighed. "Emily, she's my mother." "And I'm your wife." He looked at me. "I know." "No, Daniel, I don't think you do." My voice broke. "I married you because I thought you would stand beside me when things became difficult. I never imagined I'd have to prove that our son belongs to you." Daniel reached for my hand. I pulled it away. "I need some time." He nodded. For the rest of the day, we barely spoke. That evening, Linda called Daniel. I could hear her voice from the kitchen. She sounded calm, almost cheerful. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. Then Daniel said, "Mom, stop." A pause. "No, I'm not doing this behind Emily's back." Another pause. Finally, Daniel said, "Fine, we'll do the test." My heart stopped. I walked into the living room. Daniel looked at me. "I'm sorry." I stared at him. "You said you believed me." "I do." "Then why?" "Because I want this to end." I laughed bitterly. "You really think a piece of paper is going to fix this?" Daniel didn't answer. The test was scheduled for Friday. Those 4 days were the longest days of my life. I kept looking at Noah and wondering how anyone could look at his innocent face and imagine betrayal. On Friday morning, we drove to the clinic. Neither of us spoke much. When the nurse took Noah's sample, he started crying. I held him tightly. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here." Daniel stood beside me. His eyes were red. When we walked out, he whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. 3 days later, the results arrived. Daniel opened the envelope at the kitchen table. I stood across from him. He read the paper. His face changed. I waited. "Daniel?" He looked at me. "Emily!" His voice cracked. It says I'm his biological father. I closed my eyes. A wave of relief rushed through me, but it wasn't happiness. It was exhaustion. I had spent days being treated like a suspect in my own marriage. Daniel walked toward me. I told you I believed you. I looked at him through my tears. But you still made me prove it. He started crying. I know. Before I could say anything else, someone knocked on the front door. Daniel wiped his face and opened it. Linda stood there. She looked strangely confident. I heard the results came back. Daniel's jaw tightened. Yes. And? He held up the paper. I'm Noah's father. Linda looked at the result. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled. Not a warm smile, a knowing one. I knew there was something strange about that test. I stared at her. What? She looked directly at me. The problem was never Noah. My heart began pounding. Linda reached into her purse and pulled out an old photograph. She placed it on our table. This, she whispered, is why I asked for the DNA test. I looked down at the photograph, and when I saw the man standing beside a young Linda, my entire body went cold, because I knew that face, and somehow I knew this story was far from over. I stared at the photograph on the table. My hands began to shake. The man standing beside Linda was younger, but there was no mistaking him. It was Daniel's father, Michael. Daniel slowly picked up the photograph. Where did you get this? Linda looked at her son. I kept it for 30 years. Daniel frowned. Why? Linda sat down. For the first time since I had known her, she looked afraid. I didn't want you to find out this way. Daniel looked at me, then back at his mother. Find out what? Linda took a deep breath. Your father and I almost lost you before you were born. Daniel's expression changed. What does that have to do with Noah? Linda looked at me. Everything. I felt a chill move through me. She pointed at the photograph. That man beside Michael was his younger brother, Thomas. Daniel stared at the picture. I don't understand. Thomas was my husband's brother, and 30 years ago, there was a terrible family secret. Linda's eyes filled with tears. Thomas had a daughter. Daniel shook his head. So? Linda looked at Noah. She was your age when she died. Silence filled the room. I held my breath. Linda continued. She died from a rare heart condition. The doctors told the family it could be inherited. Daniel sat down. And you thought Noah had it? Linda nodded. I saw the little mark near his ear when he was born. The same mark Thomas's daughter had. I looked at Noah. His tiny face suddenly seemed even more precious. You could have asked a doctor, I said quietly. I was scared. You accused me instead. Linda lowered her eyes. I know. I could feel anger rising inside me. You told your son that his wife might have cheated on him because of a birthmark. I know. You made me take a DNA test. I know. My voice broke. And you made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be Noah's mother. Linda began to cry. I was wrong. Daniel stood up. Mom, why didn't you tell us about the medical history? Linda wiped her tears. Because Thomas blamed himself for his daughter's death. He left the family. Michael never spoke about him again. She looked at the photograph. And after Michael died, I found these old records. I looked at her. What records? Linda reached into her purse again and pulled out a small folder. There was a note from the doctor. Daniel opened it. His eyes moved across the page. Then he froze. What does it say? He handed it to me. I read the words. The condition was not connected to Noah. The mark near his ear was completely harmless. My heart sank. Linda had spent weeks destroying our peace because of something that wasn't even medically relevant. Daniel put the paper down. Mom, you hurt Emily. Linda nodded. I know. No, Daniel said, his voice shaking. You almost destroyed my marriage. Linda covered her face. I thought I was protecting you. You weren't protecting me, Daniel whispered. You were protecting yourself from an old fear. Those words silenced everyone. I looked at Linda. For the first time, I didn't see a cruel mother-in-law. I saw an old woman carrying fear for too many years. But understanding someone's pain doesn't erase the pain they caused you. I picked up Noah. He reached for my face with his tiny hand. I kissed his fingers. Linda stood up. Emily, she whispered, I'm sorry. I looked at her. I believe you're sorry. She began crying harder. But I'm not ready to forgive you. She nodded slowly. I understand. Then she walked toward the door. Before she left, Daniel stopped her. Mom! She turned around. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. If you ever question my wife like that again, you won't just lose her. He swallowed. You'll lose me too. Linda's face collapsed. She nodded and walked away. I closed the door. For the first time in days, the house became quiet. Daniel came toward me. I should have protected you sooner. I looked at him. Yes, I whispered. He lowered his head. I was afraid of fighting my mother. And I was afraid of losing my husband. He reached for my hand. This time, I let him hold it. But deep inside, I knew something had changed. The DNA test had proven that Noah was Daniel's son, but it couldn't prove something much more important. Whether Daniel and I could still trust each other after everything that had happened. That night, while Noah slept peacefully between us, Daniel told me there was one more thing he had never told me about his family. And when he finally said it, I realized Linda's secret wasn't the only secret we had been living with. Daniel sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the floor. I held Noah in my arms. What is it? I asked. Daniel took a deep breath. Before we got married, my mom told me something about my father. I waited. She said Dad had always believed Thomas was responsible for the family's problems. They fought for years. Daniel paused. But after Dad died, I found a letter he had written to Mom. What did it say? Daniel looked at me. He said he was sorry. For what? For blaming Thomas. I listened quietly. He said he had spent most of his life being angry because he was afraid. He was afraid of losing his family, and that fear made him hurt the people he loved. I looked at Noah. Daniel continued, I think Mom inherited that fear. I nodded slowly. She was afraid Noah would suffer the same way. But instead, I whispered, she made us suffer. Daniel nodded. Yes. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Noah began to cry. I smiled through my tears and rocked him gently. Daniel watched us. I don't want fear to become part of our family, he said. I looked at him. Neither do I. The next morning, Daniel called his mother. He asked her to come over. When Linda arrived, she looked nervous. She stood at the doorway holding a small box. I brought something for Noah. She handed it to me. Inside was a tiny silver bracelet. It belonged to Daniel when he was a baby, she said. I looked at Daniel. He smiled faintly. Linda sat down. I know a bracelet can't fix what I did. No, I said. She nodded. I know. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I was so afraid of history repeating itself that I forgot I was creating new pain. Those words stayed with me. Because sometimes people hurt us not because they hate us, but because they are carrying wounds they never learned how to heal. That doesn't excuse their actions. But sometimes understanding the wound helps us decide what to do with the pain. I took a slow breath. I can't forget what happened, Linda. I don't expect you to. But I don't want Noah growing up watching his family fight either. Linda began to cry. So, does that mean you forgive me? I looked at her. Not all at once. She nodded. I understand. But I can try. Linda smiled through her tears. That was the beginning, not a perfect ending. A beginning. Over the next few months, things slowly changed. Linda stopped questioning everything I did. She started asking before giving advice. Daniel became more honest with me. And I learned that trusting someone again doesn't mean pretending they never hurt you. It means allowing them the chance to show you they have changed. One evening, I was sitting on our porch with Noah in my lap. Daniel came outside and sat beside me. He looked at our son. Do you remember when my mom asked for that DNA test? I smiled sadly. How could I forget? I hate that I let you go through that. I leaned my head against his shoulder. You learned from it. He kissed my forehead. So did you. I looked at Noah. He was playing with a little wooden toy, completely unaware of the storm his family had survived. I whispered, he'll never know how much fear surrounded him before he could even speak. Daniel smiled. Maybe that's okay? I looked at him. Why? Because he'll know something better. What? That his parents chose each other. I felt tears fill my eyes. And he was right. The DNA test had answered one question. Was Daniel Noah's biological father? Yes. But that was never the most important question. The real question was whether love could survive suspicion, whether a family could heal after trust was broken, whether forgiveness could exist without forgetting the pain, And I learned something I will carry for the rest of my life. Blood can tell you who belongs to a family, but trust, love, and the choices we make every day are what truly make a family. That night, I kissed Noah goodnight. Then I looked at my husband. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. I knew our family wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And sometimes that's more than enough.